Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from inside of a cocoon. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, for another week of the podcast. We've got a lot of motorsports and Formula One being back. We have plenty to talk about there. Of course, our League of Legends matches for the week. Justin, it's good to see you. It's been only a couple days. We had our meeting for this month and all. So it's still nice to see you, even though it hasn't been a full week.
Still feels like forever, my friend. It's always good to see you. Happy to be back here for another like you said. We got some good coverage of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Got some good League of Legends matches to cover. But before we get all into that, Aaron, tell me about your week. Give me your rose, thorn, and seed there, bud.
Sounds good. I'll start off with my thorn. And so my thorn this week, so my week, it started off like pretty solid since last episode. Over the weekend, I was doing some car work, changed my spark plugs. It was really easy, but it made me feel like out there, like I'm a mechanic. I could work for Red Bull in the pit lane. Like this is awesome. So started out pretty solid, but just one small bummer that was yesterday. I took the day off since Colleen is on a work trip and everything, so was handling the house, needed to take care of Senna and all. So I took a day off work to just have kind of a mental health day, take care of her. But I was like, I do have some adult things to get done, so I ran to the DMV to go get my new driver's license because mine's gonna expire coming up pretty soon. And so then I was like, get there, I'm like, oh, I gotta get the real ID so that I can use it to fly and whatever. And I'm going through the list, and I'm checking everything off, and then didn't have one thing on the list. So I had to just do a normal renew of the driver's license. So that was a bummer, but I'm whatever. And I had gotten new tires because when I got my car inspected, they're like, you need new tires pretty soon. You barely pass. I'm like, okay, I'll get new tires. So I ordered them from this website. They shipped them to me, got them, going out to, or coming back from getting my driver's license. I'm stopping at the auto shop where I had set up an appointment and all. And I walk in and they're like, we don't have an appointment for you. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, did you book it at another store? And I'm like, no, this is the only generic name brand auto shop that I go to in the area with my car. And they're like, so I pull up the reservation or whatever or the appointment confirmation. And even though I've never been to any other store of this chain, the website had switched the location that I was looking at on the website. So I booked at the wrong place, couldn't get there in time. And the guy at the shop was just like, yeah, had a bunch of people say that's happened lately. I'm like, well, there's a fucking problem here, my guy. I'm like, can you squeeze me in? I'm just getting tires put on. It's really not that complex. You just pop the old ones off, slap these bad boys on, hit them with the air gun, and boom, done. I was like, I've seen it a million times in Formula One.
Sure.
It should take
It should take 2 seconds, my man.
I was gonna give them 4 because they're not on that F1 level, but.
Sure.
But they're like, no, sorry. Or they're like, if you leave the car, we can get it back to you by the end of the day. I'm like, if I leave the car, I can't get back here. So I'm like, I'll just schedule an appointment for Saturday. So Saturday, getting the tires put on. So not the most terrible thing, but inconvenience that I was just I'm doing all these things on the car, trying to check things off, really trying to take care of this baby because I have determined that I'm just going to ride it. Well, I had already kind of decided I'm going to ride it as long as it will carry me. And I'm like, I need to make sure I'm taking good care of this car because I don't want to have to buy a new one.
Sure.
So, just a bummer for taking the day off, like having this time to get stuff done and not really checking off everything on my list that I should have been able to. I'm like, But my rose though was, even with all the bummers yesterday, my Tuesday with Senna was awesome. We did a morning walk. We went out, walked around the cemetery, got her energy going before I ran out to run my errands. Came back, we went up onto the roof, we played, like ran around, we hung out all afternoon, snuggled up on the couch, watched TV. She was chilling. And then in the evening went for another nice long walk around the cemetery where it was just super peaceful, super relaxing. It was kind of the mental break that I had been like needing with work and all, that it wasn't just like a normal weekend, just like a day. And spending it with Senna was pretty solid. She's a good little dog. We're very lucky that she's got such a good personality and all. So
yeah, that's great. So like up on the roof, I take it it's just a roof, but there's like a little space for her to like spread out and play.
Yeah, so it's
cool.
like basically the length of our building and everything. It's just this big open rooftop, and they have a little not gazebo, but that little like wood structure with the beams that go across it.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
And then outdoor TV up there, bunch of seating and everything. So it's like a nice hangout spot. Over the summer, Colleen and I would chill up there a lot on weekends.
Nice.
So it's a cool spot, but it's open enough that we can like throw the ball around a little bit, let her run around and play. So
gotcha. That's kind of awesome.
So it's a nice spot, and like it was beautiful weather out and everything. So a solid way to spend the day, going around and spending good time with her.
Very cool. Yeah, that does sound really nice. Little walk in the morning, walk in the evening. That's cool that you guys have that area where you're able to do that. That's cool.
Yeah, it was nice. But then my seed is just that Colleen is home tomorrow. She's been gone since I haven't seen her since Monday morning. And like I knew I was gonna miss her and everything, but it definitely was just I think it's kind of the longest we've gone without seeing each other since we moved in together. And so it was just kind of like weird. So I'm just excited for her to be back and looking forward to that. But I went on a nice long rant there on my thorn. So how's your week going? We'll keep this rolling.
No worries, sir. So I guess in line with your Real ID shenanigans, I was getting my recommendation for my medical marijuana card, and a little bit of a silver lining there. Normally, I guess there's a card fee, but I just like waited on it because my card doesn't expire yet. I still had some time. Was just waiting to put that charge on my card, basically. And out of the blue, the card shows up in the mail. So I'm not sure if you only have to pay that fee one time or you know, if you're supposed to be paying it every time. But I think I got a card for not $50.
I would imagine that it would be like it would just automatically renew kind of thing, just because. Sorry, Senna's in the background, I hear, but once you pay, it's like a prescription kind of. Like it sounds like it's just kind of the same thing as like, oh, you have a prescription that gives you a year worth of medicine, and then like typically people just have to go back to the doctor to get like a new prescription, but in this case it sounds like it's just something that maybe carries over. So
Yeah, I mean, either way, I'm happy to not have to pay that card fee and still be able to get my, get my product. So I was pretty happy about that. But we get another year of being able to use it free and clear. So that's super exciting. And then my thorn here for the week, dude. As I get older, I get, I guess, more and more uncomfortable with this stuff. Where, in my opinion, I don't think it adds anything to the moment. Me and Sarah were watching a show, and I just got really upset at on-screen animal death,
Mm.
where I feel it's like just super unnecessary. I don't think it it
Like
just doesn't do it for me
like
overall.
family pet or like hunting or like car accident or
Really, any of them, just in the sense of like, because it is a TV and a movie, that's a choice that they made to put it there. In my opinion, most of that stuff is most effective when it's like implied or like, it happens off screen, maybe with just like an audio cue or
oh,
whatever.
okay. So yeah, like but actually seeing it, I thought you meant just like it happening in the show, like
Oh,
even
no, I
off
mean, that
screen or
that
like
I understand, like, things happen, but using it as, like, a set piece kinda thing,
mhm.
to me, it just, like, rarely ever adds to the moment, and more often than not, just, like, takes me out.
What
So
about like in I Am Legend when Will Smith has his dog and the zombies get it after all? Like I feel like they might show. I feel like they show that.
Oh, yeah, where he, like, puts his dog to sleep, like, that makes
Yeah.
me so sad,
No,
and,
it
like,
definitely does, but like I feel like
yeah.
in some movies it does add something to it. But I understand that in a lot of movies it's like it could be left out.
Or like I said, just implied, and yeah, well, whatever. I'm no director. I don't know how you would do it. But yeah, I just find often it takes me out and like really colors my opinion. I think mostly for the negative.
Mm,
So yeah, just kind of noticing things like this a little bit more. And
gotcha.
then my rose here for the week, dude, very excited. There's a website that I've been like taking surveys, I guess you would say, or like answering like little questionnaires. And it came through where I'll be participating in a 4-day taste test next week
Oh,
and like being compensated for my time, like going to a location, like, put in a pickle on a cracker, telling them how I like the consistency and, getting paid.
that's
So I'm
awesome.
like, yeah, I'm super looking forward to it. I think it's going to be sweet. And it's been like a year and a half of doing these like responses basically intermittently.
I had
I
done
did
some of
another
those
one.
before on like
Mhm.
yeah, like similar survey website, but I didn't realize that you could end up getting like actual legit like local studies and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and it seems like, dude, the last time I went in, it was for a product evaluation. The last time I went in, dude, there were mad people just like in and out the door, people coming in, filling up and leaving. So the place that I'm going with, it seems like has a bunch of clients that, need this data. So they've got a nice little thing going. So that's very exciting. I was happy to be a part of it then, happy to be a part of it again. And I will tell you how the thing tasted next week. Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
will be done by Wednesday. Obviously,
nice.
won't leave any secrets out, but I think it'll be really fun.
No, that's
But yeah,
awesome. That'll
that's my
be a cool experience.
yeah, I think it will. The product evaluation was cool, and the taste test will be interesting. Yo, I just want to comment on your car thing, dude. It's like it's been a shower thought recently, or like the thought before I fall asleep, is the notion of I'll likely only need to buy two more cars, and then
Oh,
the combating thought of I wonder if I could. I wonder if I could make it where I only need to buy one more car.
No.
Probably, right? That'd be tough. But
Because
having the
what year is your
realization,
car right now? Like 2017? 2018?
2018,
Okay.
very, very low mileage, well taken care of.
Yeah, but just two more cars?
I mean, think about it.
I mean, how
It's
long? Like, so my car, I expect it to get me. I'll have had it for about. I'm at 8 years now, and
okay.
so I think I could get it. It's a 10-year-old car though, so I think
Hmm.
I could get it to like 4 or 5 more years out of it. But I'm only estimating maybe like 15 years a car. But I guess you are doing super low mileage compared to me. I'm driving almost 40 miles daily with my
Hmm.
commute. So,
Yeah, like if let's say my traffic needs stay the same within a certain range. Yeah.
dang, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
And that's a wild thought. And I
That's
was
a
like,
very
damn.
wild thought.
And I don't know, call it morbid or whatever, but yeah, I was actively thinking of like, yeah, I hope it's no more than two. And then I fell asleep on that thought. Yeah.
I hope that we live so long that you need four more.
Sure. Yeah, there you go. Thanks for cursing me with that. You're gonna be long gone, and I'm gonna be on my fifth
You're gonna be
fucking Jeep, just like,
160.
yeah, yeah, kill me. Just trying to get run over by my own car. Yeah.
Oh no, that's funny.
No, I do appreciate the well wishes though. That means a lot.
Of
Speaking of
course.
speaking of how many cars these people are gonna have, some of
Oof.
these drivers I hope will be in many more vehicles. We've got the Formula One Bahrain Grand Prix, but I think we have a little bit of IndyCar to touch on because goddamn was the season opener kind of a silly one.
Oh, it was a banger. There was for how like for the most part kind of tame or boring the Bahrain Grand Prix was. The St. Petersburg Firestone Grand Prix was a bloodbath, man. And fortunately, not in actuality, but without safety mechanisms could have been pretty bad. But before we get fully to that, I just wanted to make a note that Jamie Chadwick, who was a three-time W Series driver, I believe, or W Series reserve driver, was racing for Andretti in the IndyCar NXT series. So that's kind of their feeder series up to IndyCar. But pretty cool, a woman driver who is getting that opportunity over in IndyCar. We've seen a couple of folks get those chances here in some of the up and coming series. I just thought it was a cool note to see that another woman was having an opportunity to step into the sport, and I think the more that drivers who are like competitive of any gender will be just getting opportunities. I thought that was awesome. She ended up finishing 13th out of 19 starters, but she finished 13th out of 14, so she did end up ahead of one of the other cars in the field there. So I thought that was pretty cool because it showed like even if you're second to last in the race, you're not last, and like that's a cool thing to see a woman who we haven't seen a ton of women in motorsport come in, and like even if she's only there right now, like the potential for progress and growth and everything just by being able to have this opportunity is exciting to see.
Yeah, and it becomes the what would you say, like, originator or big steps towards a co-ed grid, a bunch of
Yeah.
females, bunch of dudes on the grid. I think that would be interesting to say the least. Yeah, Forbes has her as one of their 30 under 30 athletes to look out for. That's pretty exciting stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so a cool opportunity, and I look forward to seeing kind of how she progresses throughout the season, because it is something that I think the more that you get to practice or go against and compete against like higher levels of competition and all, which I feel like going from just the W Series into kind of the full realm of motorsports in going into this Indie NXT series. There's a lot of room to like learn and grow, so I want to see how she does throughout the season. But looking at the actual IndyCar race that we had, I was super pumped. I was ready for it. We had the F1 race in the morning. I'm like, afternoon, we've got the IndyCar race. I was like ready to chill on my couch and watch and all. And especially with Roman Grosjean getting his first pole position here, or I guess no, second pole position, but taking the first pole position of the year here
Gotcha.
to start off the race for the IndyCar season, because I'm pumped to see him like do well, because I really think he has a lot of good drives in him, and it's fun to see. But starts off great with the pole position, running a really solid race, but this race turned to a lot of mayhem.
Very quickly. First lap pile up at the back of the pack.
And that was brutal.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 cars, and then after like the red flag to get everybody going again. Who is it? Marcus Ericsson and Romain Grosjean at the front, like front two, battling it out. And then like that stays fine for a good while. We get a couple cars going out. I think it was on like turn 8 and 11 where you had these long right-handers that had, the tire wall and people just sliding straight into the tires. Sliding into the tires. So a lot of cars going out, a lot of mayhem. But what's crazy about like some of these crashes is the fact that the cars were getting airborne, people just coming down right on their noses. So it was some pretty scary stuff there for a good bit of the race, actually.
Yeah, and so like looking at that, the craziest part to me was one of these sharp right-handers was I think it was turn 3 is one of them, and it's right after the pit exit. And so I just think I was looking at this and I'm like, the big thing that stuck out to me was the amount of cars that during this race ended up going into those tire barriers and ending up not finishing. We had 27 people start the race, and we ended up with 17 finishing. And I don't know, 5 of those 17 were at least a lap down. So we're seeing all of these people go out because of contact going into these tire barriers. There were probably like 4, 5, 6 drivers that went out that way. And to have this longer, and a very tight space right-hander coming right out of the pit lane, I'm just like, that makes no sense. You're coming out of the pit lane. You've got cold tires, which ended up being what happened to Roman Grosjean. He was going in a wheel-to-wheel battle with Scott Dixon, I believe, who had just come out of the pits. And Scott tries to fight him on cold tires, boils it in there so fast that he never would have made the corner anyway. There's no shot on the cold tires, and at the rate he was going, that he was going to make that corner. But not only does he not make the corner, he hits Grosjean, takes him out of the race when he had like a really good shot at winning still. I was bummed, but I was just like surprised by the track layout because I felt like there were way too many times that happened for there to be these turns that are that tight. Like, I get that it's a street circuit, and I understand that a lot of these IndyCar street circuits have tighter turns and whatnot, but that seemed a bit egregious in terms of kind of the track layout. Like, there shouldn't be that many people running into the same exact like scenario again and again and again. Like that seems like it's less of a driver not knowing what's going on issue and more of a layout issue of the track.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, especially if you are going to be racing so hard for like at the pit exit. And with that turn coming up so fast, it just, you know, like you said, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now I didn't look. Is St. Petersburg, was that the first time they were running this track?
No, St. Petersburg has been the host of the first Grand Prix of the season for the past few years.
Okay. Wait, so is it a different? Excuse me. Is it a different layout then?
I would have to look, but I don't remember it being this bad last year.
Okay.
But it has been in use for the past probably 9 to 10 years now. So
okay.
And it's been around since '85, and there's been a lot of IndyCar races, but the current like title Firestone Grand Prix and everything has been a Grand Prix from 2014 through this year.
Gotcha. So that's weird. Well, I mean, we're no IndyCar experts, but that's weird that it is just kind of like rearing its head like this, especially if you've watched the opener before and it doesn't tend to create such issues.
I don't remember it being. Maybe it was a weather issue as well. Like maybe the temperatures were cooler, or I don't know. I'd have to look into it, but
Sure.
I was just surprised. I'm like, and I know IndyCar is known for having some of these tighter tracks. There's another one that I remember where there's a chicane that kind of goes around a like fountain in the middle of this little like roundabout. Oh, wow. And it's like just a little like you go around the fountain in the roundabout and kind of continue on. But that race I remember watching and seeing just like car after car after car ramp up onto this curb of this like middle fountain area because they boiled it in too hard into this little like chicane. And so I'm like these tracks, some of them are like not quite laid out like a way that makes the most sense in my mind. But nonetheless, just a bummer for Grosjean to be out. We did have another former F1 driver end up taking it with Marcus Ericsson coming out on top. He's done a very good job in IndyCar of not just driving well, but putting him in a position for if someone else does make a mistake to jump on that. He did a similar thing at the Indy 500, I believe, this past year where there was a restart and he was able to just get a really good drive out of the restart and everything from the rolling start, and ends up taking that win there in Indianapolis. So he has really done a nice job in IndyCar of putting himself in a position to be successful. So I'm not shocked that he did that again today, or this week.
Did I understand it correctly? So both Marcus Ericsson and Scott Dixon race for Chip Ganassi Racing, correct?
I believe so.
Why do they do the different liveries on the cars then?
So it's all based on sponsorships and everything. Okay. So like the drivers have more individual sponsors for them, and so like the teams are also pretty separate. So like So like Dixon and Erickson, although they're both under Chip Ganassi Racing, they both have like entirely separate team crews because since the cars aren't fully made and all by the like team, they're like all the same car that everyone gets, and it's your setup and the way you drive it and whatever else that changes those things, and your engine supplier. But because of that, they don't have this like technical team that's working with both drivers at the same time to like create a car and develop a car that's going to be faster and better like they are in F1. So really it's just like the driver, their pit crew and like pit wall team, strategists, all of that. And it's like two separate teams just under the same name, more so. So with that, each of them kind of gets their own sponsorships and all to be their like their main sponsor for their team, as opposed to like the team being like, here's your sponsors, here's your livery. They each individually have their own like partnerships.
Gotcha, dude, because that kept messing me up. I kept like wanting to like put those notes down, and I was like, oh wait, but their livery just here, just let me check real quick. And
they change liveries.
Yeah, they're the same.
They change liveries a lot too. Like Grosjean last year, I think had like 8 different liveries. Every single race, I was like trying to figure out what weird color he was gonna be driving, because he had like a green car for some races. He had the DHL yellow and red. He had like a blue and white car. He had something with purple on it. Like he had just all these different liveries based on different sponsors and everything like throughout the year last year. So it's definitely a little tougher to to narrow down, but the drivers also aren't like working as much as a team either like they are in F1.
Right.
So,
dude, patch this sport for clarity. Give me exactly the same liveries, give me the same color. I need it to line up.
Seriously, it is confusing, but it did get my interest peaked for the IndyCar season, so I'm looking forward to watching some more. But we did, of course, have the first F1 race of the season as well. We had the Bahrain Grand Prix, and like Justin yawning right there, there were a couple of pretty slow points during the race where not too much was happening. But leading up to the race, we had, of course, a couple of little storylines. Of course, it's Fernando Alonso's 22nd season in the sport coming into the race. He had great drives during the practice sessions, solid qualifying, starting out 5th there, and so some big expectations. There was also a report that came out this past week before the race that I guess in an interview, Fernando had talked about his own injury from last year where he crashed in Q3 at Australia and ended up, he had some broken bones in his hands that did not fully heal until after the midsummer break. So from April 2nd April 3rd all the way through like early August, he was still healing some broken bones in his hand, which I think speaks to kind of why he was hyping up Lance so much this past week in terms of him coming back from his own injury and everything to be able to race this weekend.
Because he, for the most part, knew what it feels like. That's that's pretty big, and I didn't know that, or it wasn't.
I didn't either. I don't think I don't think that they had really like released anything. I think he just kind of powered through.
Crazy,
which is wild. But of course, Lance Stroll as well. We were talking last week that we didn't kind of expect him to race. We thought Felipe Dragovich was going to be coming in, but Lance, 13 days after his training accident biking, where he had pins put in his wrists and everything to help the bones heal and surgery and all, he made it back onto the track. I So this is one of the initial questions that I have for you. So first off, huge props to Lance. The amount of work he put in that 2 weeks to work his wrists back into shape to drive a car like that for as many laps as they did over the weekend and everything is pretty incredible. But I feel like a little bit of a crazy person because at the end of the weekend, we'll get to it when we talk about the race a little bit more, but Lance Stroll finishes P6. You look at that and you go, oh my God, like he had it in him the whole time. Like that's what my heart wants to say.
Okay.
My brain is like, I didn't think he should be driving at the start of the weekend. You and I discussed it during practice sessions and all,
Sure.
where we're like watching him struggle with the steering wheel. I still don't think he should have raced this weekend. Like, yeah, I think it's awesome that it was a great result for Aston Martin, that he got some solid points, ended up having a good drive. But, like, I don't know if that was, like, the safest thing to do still, to have him out there no matter what the result was.
Well, I mean, we're not his trainer. I imagine there's a level of physical therapy and care that was applied that we probably can't even conceive of the intensity of.
But, like, all it takes is one, like,
Yeah, sure.
bad twinge of the wrist while you're trying to go around a turn or something, and you're gonna be going back to the medical tent probably and
Sure.
needing more. Like I just felt like
I doubt they ever would have let him race if it wasn't like 99% safe.
I just I want to think that, and I hope that's the case,
Yeah.
but I guess I don't fully trust, like, when it comes to these professional athletes and everything, and there's lots of money on the line and all for these things, I don't always trust that the best decision is being made, but more that the decision is kind of flexible based on how persuasive the athlete is. And so, like, in the NFL this year, we saw the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa, their quarterback, got absolutely destroyed early in the season, like taken out of the game with a concussion, like not like the guy didn't know where he was and was back playing the next week and then gets concussed again. And like you're just basically like, this guy should never have been out there, because yeah, maybe things could have gone well and he would have made it, but like the damage from going back too soon and everything, long term could potentially be really bad. And with Lance, like, say he had gotten into some sort of accident or incident over the weekend and all, who knows, like, with still healing broken bones and everything, if you re-break things, it could be way worse than just like letting it heal a little bit more. Where like with Tua in the NFL, it's like they did put him back out and the worst did happen, and he was like people are still concerned that they're of what the long term like brain effects and things like that are going to be of getting concussed, hit that hard like multiple times, like back to back essentially. So I'm really happy that it all went well and everything, and I'm really impressed by Lance's performance. I think he had a great drive on the weekend and all. But I still have this thing in my gut that's like, I don't think that was the right move from the team or the doctors. And like you said, they have more info than I do, but the fact that we were watching him during like practice sessions and all, like with his hand coming off the wheel here and there and like struggling with some of the turns, I was just like, I don't know.
Well, it seemed like, and based on the descriptions, it really seemed just like a range of motion limitation at that point in the weekend, as opposed to like there was pain and discomfort that was like um prohibitive, I guess you would say. But yeah, I don't know all the details. I agree with you. I hope that decisions weren't made hastily. I hope decisions weren't made around like, yeah, but like, will Felipe really deliver? We need, to start off well and blah blah blah. Thank you very much, dear. So yeah, I think that it
Yeah,
should be taken it should be taken carefully, the choice to bring an athlete back. Yeah.
yeah. I hope that it was made in the right way and not just like Lance being like, "Oh, I can do it, guys. I'm telling you I can do it." Cuz that's where I start to be like, cuz you do question it cuz these guys are so driven and so um like motivated and competitive as athletes that if you're just like listening to the guy because they're like, I know I can do this, I really need to be out there, I want to be out there, I love racing, like
Hmm.
then that's not necessarily the best case. But like I said, all went well. He had a
Yeah.
good race, so I'm glad there were no issues. But um, a couple of other just like quick pre-race notes. But McLaren was given the green light by the FIA to actually use these rotating digital ads on their car and all during races. So I believe last year when we had looked at it and everything, it was like they had it on during practice sessions or something just as like a test of it.
Hmm.
But they're officially able to use that. So I thought that's just a really cool, like, big innovation in terms of marketing for these sports.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty cool thing to see. And then, of course, getting closer to the race with qualifying, we had Red Bull who kind of came out afterwards and said, hey, we didn't really set our car up for qualifying, but they went ahead and took pole position on the quali leading into the race nonetheless, which is definitely, I think, was a concern for the other teams leading into the weekend to go, man, they're faster than us, and they didn't even set up the car for qualifying. Oh, no.
Well, that could be like a really funny troll too. Like you can say anything you want,
That's true.
and get a reaction, get people riled up. So whether that's the case or not, yeah, they looked really good in qualifying, and then as well looked pretty good in the race. Sergio had to fight back a little bit, but yeah, I I yeah, I imagine that's just a little bit of a troll, a little bit of yeah, we
It
won.
it might be a little bit, but that was kind of discussed before the race and everything too. So it wasn't necessarily a post race like, oh yeah, we didn't even try. But even though it like kind of brought to mind, and it makes me wonder with like Ferrari's strategy a bit, especially last year. So like last year we saw Charles Leclerc get an unprecedented amount of pole positions throughout the season, consistently getting that P1 in qualifying and everything. But then the car not really being able to carry through with that through the race, with Max winning more races from Charles Leclerc poles than Leclerc did himself. And
Hmm.
so like it kind of made me wonder, like, are there teams out there, because obviously yes, qualifying super important at certain tracks, Monaco, like for an example, you do want
Hmm.
to set your car up as best you can for qualifying and not near as much for the race, because qualifying is the most important thing there because it's so difficult to pass. So it's like, was Ferrari possibly just setting their car up intentionally to like get all these poles and hoping that they could run away with it from there? Or like, I feel like maybe if they balance their strategy with how they're setting up the car, then last year could have gone a bit better, whether they're setting it up for, okay, we start P2, P3, but we're going to have less tire degradation because we're doing this with the car. We're having less camber on the wheels. So, like, because this is a right-handed track, blah, 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 like, we're going to be able to have better race pace over the long stints. And so I don't know the answer, but it started making me wonder to see Ferrari have so many pole positions last year and not be able to convert them to race wins. I don't know, maybe more teams should be looking to set up their car for the race and not necessarily for quali.
Well, to be fair, I think that's what we saw out of Alpine last year, where qualifying wasn't always like the greatest, but they would always make significant gains in the race.
Yeah.
Same thing with AlphaTauri last year as well. Weren't the best qualifiers, but would often gain a bunch of positions in the race. So yeah, I definitely think there's something to that philosophy. Was that like Ferrari's problem last year? Who knows? But there is something about, like, yes, you do have to like select and build for one aspect of the weekend. And maybe Red Bull setup is able to just kind of hit that middle of the road a little bit better. But yeah, we'll see. One race obviously isn't the best data set, but yeah, as we get to tracks where qualifying is more or less important, we can see performance of each team compared to, like, well, is this what we expected out of qualifying? Are they doing a little bit better than their pace indicated? But yeah, right now it just seems like the Red Bull was pretty well-rounded all over.
Yeah, so really, really good start for Red Bull. They Max went just right across the board, pole position to winning the race, with only having pit stops be the reason that he wasn't leading for different portions of the race. Both Red Bulls went on a strategy stopping with doing 2 soft tire stints and then a hard tire stint, where pretty much everyone else on the circuit did 1 soft tire stint and 2 hard tire stints. I think McLaren with Lando Norris was the only one who swapped it around, but they also were having some other car troubles. So yeah, Red Bull going with higher tire wear tires for the race, but skating their way to a P1, P2 finish to start the season. And I believe it's the first time that they've won the opening race. I think Adrian Newey said since 2011. I didn't double check it. I just saw the headline and was like, I trust this guy.
Yep, we're going to run with it. Well, yeah, and then we can look out for a Sergio Perez Drivers' Championship victory. Obviously, we all know the statistic. The Madden curse is alive and well. So we can just tune in towards the end of the season now that we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, for the Mexican national anthem. So, but yeah, a really good start for Red Bull. Kind of a tough one. So just a quick like recap of the race. We saw Charles Leclerc after quite a few laps. He was 39 out of 56 when he ended up having a issue with the car that retired the car. Was running in P3 at the time, so Red Bull coasted to a 1-2, and then from 5th place, from the top rope, El Mission, Mr. Fernando Alonso, that's one of his nicknames, The Mission.
Really?
Yeah.
El Mission.
Fernando Alonso from 5th place.
That's a cool fucking nickname.
He's got a bunch.
That's neat.
He's also El Padre. He's got a
Okay.
bunch. But
El Padre. I don't like the mommy and daddy, mom, dad stuff.
That's more
Pop,
like the father. Like I'd say more than it
Sure.
is the daddy.
I mean, I guess I'm just lumping it all in. Just lumping it all in.
I mean, he's just it's kind of
man.
like the old man. Like he's
Okay.
he's the old guy out there, but had a really like good race pace at the end of the race. Especially was able to get through and fight Lewis Hamilton for a little bit. Had the pace to get past him, and then
had a
was
good
able
fight with
to
George Russell earlier in the race as well. That was exciting.
yeah, and then was able to get up and pass Carlos Sainz as well, who was really struggling at the end with tire wear. To go ahead and take that third podium position, which was cool. I was very excited to see Fernando on the podium. That's for 22 years driving, or since his debut in F1. It's pretty cool to see him start out so hot. And like we said, not only him, but Lance Stroll finished P6, has Aston Martin in second in the constructors standings to start the season. So a pretty exciting weekend in terms of results, even if it wasn't the most enthralling race.
Yeah, I gotta say, probably not the most exciting. It always feels different, like during and watching it live, because like anything can happen, and like you got a bunch of storylines, and it finishes. But yeah, looking back and saying like, all right, like what are the highlights? What do we really want to hit? Yeah, you look back, you're like, man, nothing really happened. The winner was decided almost immediately, and a couple things happened behind. So yeah, not the most exciting Formula One race, but yeah, a good start to the season. No damage, no crashes, no funny business. So a good clean start to the season.
Yeah, it was definitely, and just like, I don't expect Bahrain to necessarily be the most exciting circuit. I don't think it's a bad one. It has some opportunities for fights, but the fact that it wasn't it doesn't negate the fact that we've got a lot of fun racing ahead of us.
Sure.
But
Three DRS zones is pretty fun though, right?
That is, even though a couple of the two of them are pretty short. So
sure.
It's you can't do quite as much other than like close the gap with those a little bit, but I did want to now take us from that quick recap over to a new segment on the show that I would like to call highs and lows. So I want to start out with 3 highs from this weekend for teams, and then I'd love to hear any other highs or notes that you had from the weekend, and then talk about 3 of the lows. But my big things, one of my highs, finishing in P11, just outside of the points, Mr. Logan Sargent, American Racing, P12. So 2 spots out of the points, but
I was like, no, don't do my boy Yuki dirty like that.
No, I'm sorry. That. Yuki did. Yuki had a solid race, but Logan Sargent had an awesome weekend. Finished P12, drove really well, had a good clean start, was able to get a couple of good passes out there on the track, and just looked really good. I don't think everyone knew quite what to expect from these rookies for the first race. He beat out Nick DeVries, and then of course Oscar Piastri, who didn't finish the race, so he was the top of the rookie pile there.
Yep.
And I thought that was a awesome step for Williams to have him come out and drive just a really awesome race there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that one there. Yeah, Logan Sargent, and especially in a car that was like at the back of the grid for so very long. Not only rookie season, but putting that Williams P12, like that's kind of a feat.
Yeah, especially to just be 2 spots back from Alex Albon, who obviously
Hmm.
is someone who has a lot of good racing experience. To be putting it in a pretty competitive spot, I would not be shocked to see him get some points before too long this season.
Sure.
Next high point, even though it was not the perfect weekend for the Alpine team. Pierre Gasly going P20 to P9 after
Hmm.
his qualifying issues where he got times deleted and all, starting at the back of the grid. He climbed really, really well where Ocon was driving and not really looking great in the car. Excuse me, looking pretty kind of like middle of the pack, having some trouble, struggling a bit, and Pierre was able to just drag that car all the way up the grid after we really didn't expect a lot from Alpine. That was a great drive from Pierre Gasly. So
Yeah, and he was one of the teams doing the soft, hard stint, correct?
I believe
So
so.
I so he would have had the opportunity to go really long, probably avoid some like pit window shenanigans and keep his car up in those higher ranks as a bunch of cars, went into the pits, not having to worry about getting, overtaken there.
Yeah, so he had a really short stint at the beginning
Yep.
on the soft tires. Was the first person to pit at
Mhm.
lap 9, then pitted for the second time. Um, he pitted at lap 25 from the hards, and then pitted one more time later on. So 3 pit stops on the day for him. But had a
And the
really
last one was for fastest lap, correct?
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe so. So yeah, really just nice race from Pierre. Um, Definitely a good way for Alpine to like cap off the weekend after kind of being expected to be towards the back of the grid.
Mhm.
So a solid finish there. Then my third high point was just the Aston Martin team this week.
Sure.
I love my Red Bull squad and everything, but the Aston Martin was really that one of those big highlights that showed they have a really good car. And we had talked about it a little bit during testing and all, but Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso both have been shown to be drivers that when they have a pretty solid car, they're able to have some good performances. They have the talent there, and with the wheels under them, they can do some pretty cool things. So a great P3 P6 for the Aston Martin team on the weekend.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And this kind of result from Fernando specifically makes me just like really excited for the rest of the season. We have like a new contender to fight for the top of the grid. And I think that's just going to be a really exciting one because he is such a I'll just say like hard racer. He just seems impossible to get by. He's going to win most overtake scenarios,
Oh yeah.
or it feels like he's going to win most.
I mean,
Um,
most experience of any F1 driver ever.
yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation that if he's in a wheel to wheel battle, he has the experience that in most cases he's going to figure out a way to come out on top. He's a
yeah,
multiple world champion, so I think you're right on track with that.
yeah. So I think those three highs are pretty good here. Without having to make a pretty tough case, I don't know if I have another good one to throw in. Let me hear what your lows from the weekend are.
Yeah, so my lows. So first off, Ferrari, who I think everyone expected
Mm,
to be up there battling for that P2, having this mechanical failure with Leclerc's car is just it's pretty brutal to start off. I mean, looking at it, Leclerc ends up DNFing. seeing reliability issues, but also not just that, the tire degradation issues that plagued them last season in terms of being of tire wear and all, killing Carlos Sainz on that last stint and getting him passed on by Fernando Alonso, not really being able to battle that at all. He was just a duck in the pond, just waiting to be picked off. Sorry to bring you back to movie animal deaths.
No, the little duck.
But it was shooting fish in a barrel. Oh no!
Oh no, not the fish.
But yeah, just the performance issues and all from Ferrari. I was disappointed. Like I'm happy that Alonso got on the podium, but Leclerc was driving a really great race, and not only that, but the part that he had an issue with was the energy storing system for the car. And so they most likely are going to have to replace that before the next race. And you're allotted 2 of them on the season. So he will be, after one race, onto his second energy storing system. If he would have to take another one later on in the season, it's a 10-place grid penalty. So just setting up for a tough weekend down the road off the bat is just pretty brutal for a team that has these high hopes for the team and all under their new leadership with Fred Vassar.
Yeah. And especially that individual was pretty relaxed when asked about the reliability issues, felt that they were, pretty well behind them. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a rude awakening in that scenario where, yeah, it may not be the power unit, but it's, still making them backslide significantly.
Yeah. And so my second low for the week, another team that struggled with mechanical issues, the McLaren team, just plagued by issues the entire race. Oscar Piastri has issues with his steering wheel, comes in for a pit stop, swap out the steering wheel, and I saw a meme where it was like the Windows like blue screen where it's got the colon like close parenthesis or open parentheses sad face and all, just like on the middle of his steering wheel instead of all the other stuff. I'm like yeah, that's how that felt. Like they swap it out, can't get the car back going, so Piastri has to retire. And then throughout the entire rest of the race, they keep bringing in Lando Norris to pit. Lando ended up pitting let's see, I think it was 5 times. I'm gonna double check myself,
dude.
But no, Lando pitted 6 times. I'm sorry, because of these issues with the car, with needing to continuously add some sort of air pressurization or something to part of the car. So just on the weekend, brutal. McLaren, they had dipped down last year to start the new regulations. You kind of hope that with a driver like Lando Norris and everything, this young guy Oscar Piastri, that there's going to be some like progress. Like not necessarily that they're going to go from 5th, 6th in the constructors to like contending for the championship. I don't think anyone had that expectation, but for them to come in and to immediately just fall flat on their face, not having the car with the upgrades it should by testing or the first race of the season, and then having all these mechanical issues. I just hope that they can kind of turn it around, but that was that's probably the lowest point that I've seen McLaren since I've started watching F1.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree. Not the best showing, and the topping up for fluids felt very me when delivering pizza and Chinese food, having to just continuously fill my beater with oil, even like multiple times on a shift or something. So yeah, that's a tough day for Lando Norris, and yeah, hopefully it gets better for McLaren.
I hope so too, but the other team, the low, and it's not as apparent of a low initially based on race results, but was the Mercedes squad. Because after this race, so there was a lot of talk around the paddock and with some different interviews. For one, Toto said that he just flat out after race one, he says that they will not be competing for the championship in 2023. He's like, there's no shot that we are going to be in the fight. He said that he thinks that Red Bull is going to win every race this year based on performance. George Russell also said that Red Bull will be the champions this year. He said they should win every race this season. That's my bet. I don't see anybody challenging. They've got it easy at the moment. And so,
Damn.
yeah. And so to kind of make a tough weekend where they kind of realized that they weren't going to be able to be as competitive and all, a little bit worse. They're looking down at this weekend. They're seeing Aston Martin come and beat them, be the second fastest car out there, really, in terms of race pace. And Toto said it gave them a wake-up call that they think that they need to change their entire car concept. So Toto said, the concept is not as strong as we thought it was. We're a second off in the long run. We're not happy. That was after practice sessions. Then after the race, he said that they have to change the concept. They did the best over the winter to try and get the car ready and like follow through with this, but now they're going to have to regroup and decide which direction they want to pursue.
Right.
So potentially a big shift, and a lot of the R&D and construction and all those efforts on behind the scenes for Mercedes potentially looking to have upgrades that are gonna, I don't know, give them side pods or change the car design, the aero and everything, and really reevaluate and change what they're looking to do with that car.
Yeah, and that's a brutal one to hear from Toto, to just be counting them out so early in the season. I imagine investors aren't going to want to hear that, fans aren't going to want to hear that, and most of all, I imagine the drivers aren't going to want to hear that. So yeah, that's a tough one, but yeah, they didn't look in the fight. I think both of the like key overtakes on them weren't that like hard fought, in the sense that like they didn't have an easy opportunity to retake that position. So yeah, I would agree there with Mercedes being a little bit of a low for the weekend.
Yeah, and just to talk about one more part of that, as you mentioned, the drivers, Lewis said, according to the thing that I have here in front of me, the tweet, it says Lewis Hamilton speaks honestly on the W14. So nice little catchy headline, but
Sure.
Basically in this interview, Lewis says that he's had many cars that are like this, especially in the early McLaren days that he was on the McLaren squad. He said, last year I said there were issues with the car. It's about the team owning up and saying we didn't listen to you. So Lewis came out in this interview, and I think one other that I saw, basically said, I was telling them that I didn't think this like concept was working last year, and I'm assuming that's based on all of the data gathering and practice sessions and long runs and everything he was doing, where he was putting this time in on this car and seeing the changes they were making and just feeling like this car ain't it. And so apparently he vocalized that to the team. They pushed forward with their efforts to make this work. sort of that lost cost fallacy or whatever, where it's like, but we've gone too far, we can't turn back now. And it's like, if you turn back now, you only got a quarter of the way to go back as opposed to 3/4 going forward. So, so yeah, that's definitely going to be tough. And I think disappointing just right off the bat. You and I both were excited about the opportunity for like competitive racing. We're like 3 teams in the title fight. Like, let's go. Oh, Aston Martin looks great too. Throw a 4th in there. It's like, Oprah, you get a shot, you get a shot, you get a shot. And now everyone's like, nope, Red Bull wins. We're just fighting for second after one race. That's very anticlimactic.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And maybe they'll have a similar trajectory to last year where they're, kind of on the rise throughout the thing, and just are able to get close like in points. But yeah, we'll have to see. That does not bode well from the Mercedes camp.
Yeah. Well, especially like I think the fact that they weren't able to compete on race pace with the Aston Martins, who are a Mercedes like buyer for engine wise, the fact that they're just looking at it, and that was kind of one of my final notes. But like looking at it from Mercedes' perspective, they're like, this team buys their engine and paired it with a car in a better way than we did. That's pretty rough. But one of the other just like funny notes, I guess, that I think it's a little like blown out of proportion, but there were a lot of jokes around this weekend about the Aston Martin being another Red Bull car in the post-race press conferences. Checo said it's nice to see 3 Red Bull cars on the podium and all of this. And this goes back to over this past off season, there were, I think, 2 lead engineers from Red Bull that were like switched over to start where took a new job and like went over to Aston Martin. I think there were maybe like 5. I think it was like 7 total people in the engineering team went from Red Bull to Aston Martin. So even though the cars are like not the same, they don't look the same, the side pods are different, like they're not, they definitely have different aero and everything that they've developed. There were a lot of jokes going around the paddock about the Aston Martin being Red Bull 2, basically, with the engineers that came over. I think Helmut Marko, Christian Horner. Christian Horner said imitation is the biggest form of flattery. Helmut Marko said something to the effect of like, oh, all those engineers that left have really good memories, like kind of thing. Sure. But I thought it was just a little bit, it was amusing, but at the same time, I'm like, Aston Martin still has a very different concept for their car. And also Fernando Alonso looked at what he was told by Lawrence Stroll and talked to the team and everything before he took that contract, and was already excited about the opportunity and the trajectory of Aston Martin before those engineers left Red Bull to go. So I'm like, I think it's an exaggeration, but it's a meme. Everyone's gonna just meme it and right into the ground. But by week 3, we're gonna be hearing about the green Red Bull, and then it'll just kind of die off as the season goes on, probably.
Well, it makes me think of that astronaut meme where it's it's always been Red Bull, always has been, and it's an astronaut with a gun to the guy's head. Yeah. It's so fucking good.
So that was kind of my final note that I just thought was a light note to kind of wrap.
the only the only low that you missed was Esteban Ocon. My man got fucked literally every way possible, to the degree that he was like, you know what, fuck this, I'm done. He's literally like, I can't serve all these time penalties, I'm out.
That's one like it this is not a negative of the race companions, but one part of the race companions that just happens is I can't make memes while the race is going
While the
on.
race is happening, sure.
Because, man, I just wanted to make a meme, and it probably would not have, like, landed with most people because it's American football. But
Right.
I just, like, there's a meme of, like, it's either a ref or a player with just yellow flags all around him on the field. There's like 15 yellow flags just surrounding him. And I just wanted to just be like Esteban Ocon and just like put that out. But then most F1 fans are not American football fans, so I don't think it would have slapped as much as I would have liked. But
sure, the joke slaps here though. That would be a good one.
Yeah, so I was, but yeah, you're right. I did miss it. He, I mean, had the starting infringement for the 5-second penalty, another 5 seconds for not serving the penalty correctly, so doesn't even get to knock off that first 5. He's just at 10. And then speeding in the pit lane. It's just like,
he's trying to get there quicker to serve it.
I don't blame him. That was a tough one for Esteban. So, and I mean, I don't think most people expected Alpine to necessarily finish in the points. So that's why it's slightly softens the blow, but at the very least, Pierre Gasly was able to get up there onto the into the points, finish up there in P9 to wrap up the weekend. So they got something out of it.
Yeah, they got something out of it. But yeah, I just thought that was a pretty funny scenario. But yeah, we had, as mentioned, Max P1, Sergio P2, and Fernando third step on the podium for the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix.
Yes, sir. But we'll have plenty of F1 content. Check out the Race Companion on our YouTube. So it's there if you want to go back, watch along with us. We're going to be hopefully able to make some progress on upgrading that throughout the season to be able to give a little bit more content or context of what's going on and everything as we're watching, so you can follow along a bit better. But check it out, Tall and Short of It, on YouTube. Looking over into the League of Legends realm this week, we had 2 matchups, one in the LCK, one in the LPL. Neither of them went very long, so which way do you want to start this off?
Let's start over in China with EDG versus LNG. We had a top of the table matchup. I think before this matchup, I think they were both 8-1 maybe at the time. So pretty intense matchup going into it. Let's talk about the series.
Yeah, so looking just right off the bat, like you said, top of the table matchup, 2 teams that have had very, very good records, and just off the bat, some of the bans, it was very bot lane focused, so kind of pushing that first game onto some kind of secondary bot lane champions. We had Draven, Caitlyn, Varus, Ashe, and Lucian banned out in round 1. So we do see the Zeri and the Aphelios being picked up in the first round of picks going through. And overall for LNG, they went for a pretty like scary comp if you get ahead. You have if the Jax gets ahead, it becomes a monster in the side lane. If the Zeri or the Yone get ahead, you are able to really just win team fights or get picks and everything, chase people down with the Zeri. But unfortunately, that does hinge on Tarzan and Tarzan on the Sejuani really getting ahead. That didn't quite happen in this game. EDG was looking pretty strong from the get-go.
Yeah, and it was a pretty even game. Both junglers looking for opportunities, not really finding them. If I remember correctly, game one, first blood didn't happen until like 11 minutes.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, both teams just like trading resources back and forth until then. And yeah, it was a pretty slow game up until then, and then just a couple of team fights, a couple of pretty good flanks, and the game ended up being decided. We see some huge teleports coming in from Ale,
Yeah.
and then on the flip side, unfortunately, Zika never able to enter meaningfully into these fights, where like just the flow that the fights were going, he was never able to enter. So EDG a lot of times just getting 4v5s off the back of Zika's like entrance path not being that strong, and Ale having insane teleport flanks, like unreal teleport flanks on the Kennen, almost single-handedly winning them the Rift Herald fight soon thereafter the first blood, and it just gets worse from there.
Yeah, the ultimates on the Kennen were huge, and Leave played so well on the Aphelios, just getting so much damage out. But I think EDG's other big thing that impressed me was just their once they got the lead, the ward coverage and the map control that they kind of took, which allowed Ale to have those opportunities to sneak in and get flanks or teleports and kind of come in behind LNG with that Kennen ultimate. They controlled the dragon objective super, super heavily. They got Soul on 4th dragon. They really just dominated with that control of objectives, and then continued to just push the ward coverage throughout the jungle. And EDG, one thing from this series that really stuck out to me. So in a lot of these matchups that we've seen, we're not always looking at the best, the cream of the crop on both sides. We're looking at a good team versus a team that's maybe a little bit lower in the standings or doesn't have quite as much star power. EDG and LNG, I would say, are very level in terms of their players, in terms of laning, in terms of team fighting, and all of these kind of aspects of their play style. But EDG's like cohesion, especially in those team fights, is just a little bit better than LNG's. I felt like their head-to-head matchups, you could say, in pretty much every lane is like a 50-50 toss-up. And you're like, I don't know which guy's better. There's maybe you could say Scout's better than Fofo in the mid lane, but then you could say Mako's better than Hong in the support role. But like really across the board, it's pretty level. But EDG was able to control the map so well, and it showed a lot in game 2 as well, that kind of once they have that lead, they just do not let it up. They had all of they just did everything right to play it out to get a victory. In game 2, neck and neck fight for just almost the entire game, where it's even in gold. It's super tight up until probably the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. And then once EDG won that one team fight and got that inch ahead, they were just like, okay, we're just going to do this, and checkmate. Like they were like, oh, we have the winning map board. Yes, like knight to d5 and bishop to f3 and ff at 30. Like, it's, like get out of here. It's that is like what takes the way that they played it out really is scary for other teams, because that's what I feel like takes a really, really good team like LNG. I mean, looking even now after the week and everything, LNG first place 9-2, even after losing to EDG. EDG second place 9-2. The only reason LNG is above them is they have one less game loss in terms of the matchups, but both teams at 9-2, top of the table. But the difference in this matchup head to head was that EDG was able to just play out from the tiniest advantage. They were able to go, okay, now we can just close out the game methodically, put the rewards in the right places, get the pickoffs, start the fights, and that is like what makes a really good team like a great team in my mind, is that ability to just know how to win games.
Sure, and that wasn't without LNG having its like win conditions as well. They took the Aphelios this time, and as we got into like those mid game to like later game team fights, if LP on the Aphelios stayed alive, they were actually winning those fights, and they had good damage output, and then they were able to push for objectives. It was the fight where Ale gets the teleport in the back line and is able to just 1v1 single out scout, gets just has that fight while the 4v5 or the 4v4 is kind of going on in the like in the lower river, and LP on Aphelios is doing everything he can. There's just so much movement from EDG that they were able to scoop him up too. But it when and if those carries stayed alive, the Rise and the Aphelios, like they were actually winning fights. They were actually like pushing EDG off of objectives, like forcing bases. So like the team comps are very well matched. And I think even like going into the mid and late game, like you were saying, LNG had opportunities to take the game. But yeah, EDG just was very, very methodical at closing it out. Once they kind of had a little bit of a death grip on it, they're able to stabilize with the dragons, get a bunch of stats that way. So yeah, I think EDG played it out very well, especially in those scenarios where the fights could have went either way. I think it really came down to Ali's teleports and Zika's Scion ults not being the best like in those later fights and just not hitting the targets that he needed to.
Yeah, and I do think a little bit of that lends itself to EDG's team comp. They had a lot of really like good team fight abilities that worked well together. Having the Talia ultimate to be able to zone off sections of the map, the Tibbers to get the stun out from Annie, Vi just always being able to dive the backline with the ultimate there, and then Ale, like you said, getting in the teleports, kind of trying to dash and dip and duck and dive into the middle of the LNG squad was I think their team comp lended itself to be able to do a little bit better in those later game team fights. So
it's so easy to go forward.
It is. But even when they were peeling back, they weren't doing too badly. I think there was I think this is from I can't remember if it's, I watched the LCK and the LPL games pretty much back to back, but there was one of the games where there were like 3 people on slivers of health just slinking away. Now that I'm thinking, it might have been no, I think it was like in the top lane, there were three of the EDG members in game 2 that were like getting away with next to no health, but just like they got away.
Yeah.
And so just hanging in there until their team comp was able to work, but like being even in gold, even in objectives, and all throughout the game up until that point, they played really well. And so very much looking forward to some playoff matchups potentially between these two teams.
Yeah, I agree. To be fair, it always takes a game like this to make me remember like, oh shit, top lane exists, dude. And top lane is super cool, man. It
Yeah,
takes a couple of good teleports for me to be like, oh, whoa, they are in the game, aren't they?
they're they're
Yeah.
not just in the Bahamas sitting on a beach drinking mai tais. Like,
Sometimes it really feels like it. But yeah, I think Ale had a huge impact in this series. He would be my player of the series or whatever, MVP.
yeah, I would have to agree with you. I mean, 8-0-8 scoreline for the two games. Super
Pretty insane.
impressive. Leave as well for EDG had a great weekend.
Hmm.
Brought up from the LDL. I think he replaced Viper in that role, but just recently, I guess is or yeah, I think he's just a recent starter for them there.
Well, yeah, because they had Viper last year.
Yeah, so they moved him to the main roster in
Yep.
December. I had to look at it just to double check myself. Um, so yeah, Leave coming in first season as the starter here and looking really solid.
Hmm. Yeah, big
So,
time.
but we did have an LCK matchup as well. Justin, you had chosen T1 versus Brion. Why don't you lead it off here?
Oh well, big old curveball. The T1 Brion series was not the one that I decided to talk about, so I can just give you just a couple of main points so you don't have to feel silly here. Because I
What?
know I did because I know I did say that one first, but I ended up watching the Freaks game. I
Oh,
apologize,
okay.
forgot to let you know.
No, no
But
worries.
we see just a couple of interesting things. We see Faker twice on mid lane Gragas. They use it in the pick and ban
Okay,
as
good. That was one of my points from the Brion series. He played it once.
yep. So you know the deal. So they use that as a flex pick to kind of hide their solo lanes for as long as they can.
Mm.
So they did that in both games. Carria back onto the Thresh, like we saw in the LPL. Aphelios being like a flavor that's going to come back. So we see T1 pick that up, and then also over in the LCK, a big note here for owner Lee Sin is 6-0 now, 7-0 after this game. I don't know if there have been other games since, but as of this match, Lee Sin has a 7-0 win rate, 100% win rate. So pretty disgusting utility on that
Well,
one.
I think. See, that makes me feel like Lee Sin's in a good spot, ironically, because it seems like even though it's 6-0, there have been how many LCK games so far, and
A
it's
lot.
only been picked 6 times. Like that to me feels like a lot of good balance with the champion,
Of
where
course, yeah.
it's able to be picked in certain scenarios and everything and be successful
Hmm.
if you play it out properly. So that's a cool thing for sure.
And then from the game two, some interesting notes here was the T1 bottom lane. They're doing the Varus Callista, and I think based on what their pick and ban was, is it's again like a flex lane that they can do where depending on what opponent picks, they can either take another AD, put the Varus support, or grab up, whatever it is. They go for the Varus Callista in this scenario. Just like some really weird drafts from T1, and I think it categorically messes with Kwangdong Freaks here in this scenario. And overall, it just really is not much of a competition in the series overall. I think those were just some interesting like pick and ban type things going on in the now 13.4 patch. We see their mid laners hovering Aurelion Soul like crazy.
Yeah, it
So
was
maybe
banned
we'll
in
see
game
that.
2,
Yeah.
by T1.
I think it has potential. I think teams want to pick it up. They're just looking to like find a good spot for it. But yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
overall, like not really a competitive series. There were some moments in game one where Kwangdong Freaks was like trading objectives cross map, but it just like it fell apart immediately. T1 develops just a little bit more pressure
Yeah.
and it just gets kicked down.
Well,
Faker's like literally like dancing while he's solo killing Bulldog. Like it was a pretty brutal little series.
I mean,
Yeah, he was just like doing the standstill thing.
the bounce in the belly. That's brutal, man.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that, and so similarly, like I was saying with EDG, where when they get a lead, they're able to execute well. Like that's one of the scary things about T1 in kind of a similar sense. But I feel like this keeps happening to T1, and I don't know if it's teams that are scared of them or don't know how to play them, but teams, I feel like most of the T1 games that we've watched this year, teams are like, oh yes, we're playing T1. Let's trade this objective for this objective. Tower for tower. Dragon for herald. Tower for tower. Oh, no first blood and it's 15 minutes. We're okay. Wait, we're down 8,000 gold. It's like it's ridiculous. T1 in a 21-minute game, just like look at it now, we're 12,000 gold ahead. They had a quarter, like 1/3 of Kwangdong Freak's gold. You have to take that and add it on to add up. Like they were only 3/4 of T1's total gold at the end of the game. That's nuts. Makes no, like, T1 is so impressive with that, with like expanding their leads like without anyone realizing. You're like, oh, like they have the same amount of towers, same number of dragons, both got a Rift Herald, and T1's up 4,000 gold. Like it's very, very impressive.
All while like it seems like they are at the front edge of the patches and like what's popular, what's going to be played. If anything, like they are innovating and then like just dropping it the second they realize like it's not the strongest thing, or they figure out what the next strongest thing is. Like the Hail of Blades Varus with Callista support, like, dude, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And other teams are going to be like, well, this must be the thing. So yeah, not only are they like playing in game really well, but their ideas about the game are super interesting as well.
And all of their players seem to have been able to adapt very well, which I think is also another big part of them being on the cutting edge, is like they're picking up these not necessarily new champions, but champions that they probably haven't played a ton recently. Thresh hasn't been played a ton recently. It's been a lot of these mage supports. It's been a lot of the marksman supports and whatnot. Like I'm sure Kiria's gotten some Thresh games in on his on his account.
But it's not like flavor of the moment.
Or like Faker on the Gragas. Like Gragas mid lane, I don't think has been a thing since like 2016. Like
I think it's been a long time.
It's been forever, but all of their different roles on the team seem to be very comfortable. I mean, Kiria played Thresh and Callista in the two games. I mean, we're seeing like very different play styles from them coming out and looking comfortable and winning comfortably, which T1 seems to be thus far head and shoulders kind of above the field in the LCK.
Yeah, and like I said, not only like in-game play, but also like what their ideas about the pick and ban are. So yeah, if you haven't been watching T1, go watch a match of theirs. I think it's it's probably the most exciting league being played right now, barring like some LPL teams. But yeah, they're really killing it, and I hope they keep this going into the playoff runs.
Yeah, they look really good. It's a long stretch till Worlds, but MSI is coming up, and in the LCK, T1 is at the top of the table by a couple of games. They're 13-1 right now, with a 27-7 overall record. Second place is D plus Kia and Genji, who are both 10-4 right now. So. Really not a super tight competition, even though there's the top of the table in the LCK, all the top 6 teams are all very strong. They're all above 500 in their record.
Right.
So but that does wrap up the League of Legends for this week, which brings us towards the end of the podcast. But as always, we have our flavor of the week. Justin, why don't you lead us off here?
Oh, exciting stuff. So I just want to I don't know what this is, but one quick note, the I guess it was the VCT lock-in tournament for 2023 for Valorant.
Okay.
They I'm pretty sure they denote it as a major, the way they were talking about like victories and stuff. Fnatic wins, denying the reverse sweep against the defending champions Loud in the finals. So game 5, they're down. I think it's like 7-11. You know, map win is 13. So Loud is literally 2 maps off from like making the reverse sweep a reality. Fnatic just steel man reserve, and they do not let Loud win another round. They take it to OT and just win 2 rounds back to back and win the title. Fnatic clinches their first Valorant title since they were in the first finals. I think that was now 2 years ago. I think this will be the 3rd season of Valorant.
That's crazy. Well, and Fnatic, so they had not dropped a game up until that finals either, looking at
and Loud played really well.
They 2-0'd Sentinels, 2-0'd Furia, 2-0'd the 100 Thieves, 3-0'd Na'Vi, just crushing through. And Na'Vi hadn't lost any maps up until they played them. So some really good competition in this tournament. Exciting to see, and congrats to Fnatic on that. I'll have to go back and check that out. I didn't catch any of this tournament, so we'll have to keep an eye out for some of the Valorant coming up here.
Yeah, just some of like the big majors I'll be keeping an eye on. Dude, in the final rounds, it was there. I don't know like what the roles are actually like that well, but the Fnatic player Alphair, dude, this guy has some insane rounds like in the final minutes to just like literally like to win the game for them. Like it's crazy moments on Icebox for game 5. So if you want some exciting Valorant, go check out that final. It was super sweet. But yeah, I'll give you my flavor of the week here. I'll give it to you super short now. So my music here for the week, I was getting big YouTube video ambiance vibes recently. Our downstairs neighbors have been playing just like oldies, kind of like classic music, but it's coming through the floor. So like it's a little bit muted, but still there. So I don't know if you've ever seen the like ambiance videos on YouTube where it's like classical music playing in another room while it rains. It's like stuff like that.
Well,
so,
we this is probably going to sound super millennial like of me, but when we leave Senna home in her crate, like while Colleen and I go to work until the dog sitter gets there, I just play one of those like 10 hours of relaxation music for your dog on YouTube.
There you go.
And just have that going. It's just like peaceful. There's like, yeah, nature sounds and like classical music and all. So yeah, I can relate.
Dude, I love that stuff though. It really does. It really does set a mood and set a vibe. So it's fun to have these, oldies floating up through the floorboards. Always very fun. My visual medium here for the week, going back to an old classic. I don't know if you're a big fan, but the old Yu-Gi-Oh animated show.
I watched it back in the day.
It is a banger, and goddamn does it make me laugh going back to it. Like, literally everybody he goes up against is just cheating. The TV show does not care an ounce about what the rules of the actual game was. It just, like, makes it up as it goes. It is the wildest thing you have ever seen when it's, like, compared to, like, no, this is based on a game, like, with rules, right? And they're like, yeah, we don't care. They just do whatever they wanted. It's super fun.
Blue Eyes Magic Dragon.
yeah, exactly. Like, wait, you're supposed to, like, there's all sorts of rules that they just don't care about.
It's funny because like I played Yu-Gi-Oh! I played Pokemon. I didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Very much, like the card game growing up, more Pokemon, but when you're playing those games as like a 10-year-old, like I didn't know the rules of them very well either.
Sure.
But it's funny, especially I think now for you as someone who plays a card game with some very intensive rules and interactions and everything. Like you're not just looking at interactions like 1v1, especially like in the commander format in particular. You're like this interacts with that and this and that, and you're playing an instant, and so you're like rules, and then watching that where they're just like, I summon my dark magician, and you're like, you didn't meet the mana cost.
Yep, 100%. It's so funny. I mean, believe me, I've suspended my disbelief well enough that I'm not doing that. But I am like giggling at the things that are just like ridiculous.
That's like, obviously I know you're not yelling at the TV, but in my mind it's like that emotion of like, this is so silly that like I can understand why you're enjoying like laughing at it, just being like, oh, Yugi.
Exactly. I can't wait to get to the Maximilian Pegasus duel. I'm looking forward to it. That and the Seto Kaiba threatens to kill himself on the castle walls. Dude, it's beautiful. And then my food here for the week is the idea of like staples, like staple meals versus like new meals that you're trying. Okay. I remember a time when my mom wanted to do like ribs because we had like, I got like a rack of ribs out and was like, that was amazing. She was like, well, let's try them at home. Dude, I have never been more disappointed in my life. There was like no sauce. It was like fatty, like pork ribs. And probably to this day, I've never had the heart to tell my mom, like, that was the grossest fucking thing ever. And she was like, ribs at home, Justin. We've got ribs at home.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I said to say, I love Sarah for like always wanting to try new things and getting my input and whatever. Yeah. Because that ribs at home meal was super tasty, let me tell you. But that's my flavor of the week. Let me hear yours.
Well, first off, I can relate to that some. Like, growing up, my parents definitely, they had staple meals that they would go to, and, like, different, there was, like, I can only call it, like, a Mexican stir-fry, where my mom would do, like, Mexican rice with, like, cut-up sausage and diced tomatoes and peppers and things like that, all mixed together and cooked up. And, like, it was really good, or, like, taco night where you got your shells and your beef and all the mix-ins and you're just walking down the line and adding everything. White people taco night, as it were.
Yeah. Hell yeah. With your old El Paso sauce and like the whole counter is yellow.
Just a nice glob of sour cream at the end of it. And so So I can definitely yup. I can relate there completely. It's
Nice.
I think one of the and like I didn't have any issue with my mom's cooking growing up. Like it worked. My parents did it. They raised 3 kids on a budget. Like hey, power to them. But I love the fact that I can go out and just like make all these different foods. Like similar to Sarah. Like I love experimenting with new stuff. So that's cool. But for my food this week, I didn't experiment too much. So Willie, friend of the pod, came over today to help watch Senna a little bit in the afternoon since Colleen's on her work trip. So he was here for a bit with her, playing with her, hanging out and all. And so as a thank you, I was like, hey, when I get home, hang out for a bit. I'll cook you dinner. Like we'll have just a solid dinner and everything. So I made us some steak, some roasted Brussels sprouts, and mashed potatoes. But I did spice it up a little bit. I made this like nice little cheese sauce to drizzle on the Brussels sprouts and the potatoes and all like gravy-esque. And it was I was very impressed. Like I think I did a nice job, and so I was proud of myself with that one. So
Hell yeah.
solid meal. But my music this week is, I've talked about him before, I think, but there's an artist called Petey. I found him through TikTok. He made all these like very bizarre, outlandish, like you're not ever really sure what's going on in the video kind of things, which I was like, it's weird, but I like it. Where he's playing like every single character and like doing all these like dialogues with him, like
that's neat.
With other characters, but all of them are him, and like he's not really changing his appearance other than like a shirt or a hat or something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But so I've liked some of it, like his most recent album that he had put out and everything. There's some like songs that I like. It's pretty different. Like it's kind of poppy, but it's also the lyrics and like the themes in the songs are just like a little out there, like similar to these TikToks. But I bounced back to one of his older albums I hadn't really checked out. And while I was listening, this one song, Haircut, came up. And I was just thinking about it. I'm like, this guy is like, he's a very interesting person, like the way his brain works. Like I'm listening to the song, and basically the song's talking about how, so he has like long hair, like shoulder length, like long straight hair. And in the song, he's talking about like basically how he gave himself a haircut. Like he's like, I got drunk, I wanted to show myself that I had control of something in my life, so I shaved my hair, because giving myself a haircut, I was like, this is something I can control in my life, and like everything's a mess around me, but this is like the one thing that I can do. And it just even though I can't super relate to it and like having that same experience, I'm like, man, like this guy, he's got some like deep lyrics. Like the music is definitely not for everyone. Like it's got a different vibe than like a lot of the super popular like poppy stuff. But I've enjoyed his music, and then like hearing that and like kind of listening to the lyrics, which I don't always do, to be honest. I kind of just like jam out and sing along without thinking about the words. I was like, man, this guy's like pouring his heart out in his words here. It was he's a pretty good artist, so definitely would recommend.
You said Petey is the name of the artist?
Petey, Petey. So check him out. And my visual medium for the week, Colleen and I have been watching this show Traders on Peacock. We're at like the last couple episodes here.
Right.
But it's interesting. It's like a game show similar to Survivor and all, but basically there are like 20 people who come onto the show. There are 3 people who are randomly designated to be traders.
Yes.
And so they get to, each week, they get to murder one of the non-traders to get, not actually, they get to kick them out of the game. And then the whole group, including traders, comes together to try and vote out someone who they think is one of these traders who's picking off people. And the goal would be for the non-traders to find all the traders and vote them out, or for the traders to get rid of enough of the innocent people to win the game. And so it's, I think the most go ahead.
Isn't that just the, what's that game?
Assassin? Or Mafia?
No, the computer game that where you're in a spaceship and you're the little
Among Us.
Among Us. Yeah, isn't that not okay.
Sort of? Yeah, it's pretty much Among Us, but
okay, neat.
I think what like is the most interesting about, at least, so this is the first season of it, but the weirdest part for me, which makes it interesting, is the cast that they brought on.
Sure.
And so the cast is a mixture of people from Bravo shows, so like Below Deck or like Real Housewives, plus people from Big Brother. There's multiple people from Big Brother who have gone on and competed in like game show reality shows.
Right.
Then there's a number of people from Survivor who are on this show. Then there's also people from who are just random people who just signed up to be on a game show. So there's like all these people that are in the reality TV world like celebrities, and then just some random like, oh yeah, so I'm a plumber in my real job at home and I just signed up to come on, or I'm a political analyst and I'm like diagnosing what I think's up with these people. And it's like there's just like random people, and then there's people that you would be like, that's like a C-list celebrity, like, or D-list celebrity. It's a very bizarre, like, put together the cast, which makes the interactions like pretty interesting, because no one actually really like brings up those things outside of like, well, this person's gameplay, they've got knowledge because they did this. But there's no one's like, oh my god, you're this person from that, like fanboying or fangirling over it, like,
sure.
But so it's like interesting because these are like very well known people in a lot of instances, and just like random people just thrown in together. So it's been a fun show to watch. We've enjoyed it a lot. It's worked out. I think initially I was like, this game show could be trash. Sure. But it actually has turned out to be like pretty solid. I've been really impressed by how it's worked out and the twists and turns that the game throws in along the way. So definitely a fun one. Would recommend it. It's on Peacock, which I think you can get for free. So feel free to check it out, everyone. But that is my flavor of the week for this week.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can find us on Google, Spotify. We got video episodes on YouTube. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Tell us what you like about the show. But yeah, just thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you for the next one next Thursday. So peace out.